Imagine sitting in the quiet of your own mind, with nothing to distract you from the truth you've ignored for years. Not the truth you show the world, but the one you only feel in the spaces between your thoughts. That truth whispers something most people spend their entire lives running from. Somewhere inside you, a part of you never grew up. Not because you're weak, and not because you failed, but because there was a moment in your life, maybe one moment, or maybe many, when your emotional world felt too overwhelming to continue. And so it froze. That version of you didn't disappear. It stayed beneath the surface, shaping your reactions, your fears, your relationships, and even the dreams you keep delaying. You might be physically grown, you might carry adult responsibilities, you might even look successful to the world, but deep inside, a younger emotional self still holds the steering wheel. Think about how often your reactions feel disproportionate, almost childlike. The sharp sting of criticism, the fear of abandonment, the urge to withdraw when things get too real, the sudden panic when someone finally sees you. These reactions don't come from your present self. They come from the younger you, the one who learned long ago that the world wasn't safe enough to grow in. That version of you made a decision: survival over expansion. And so, you survived. You adapted. You created masks. You built behaviors that kept you safe but small. You learned to over-explain, to please, to stay quiet, to hide your talents, to avoid conflict, to suppress your desires. Not because you didn't want to grow, but because growth felt dangerous. Inside every emotionally stuck adult is a younger version still waiting for someone, finally someone, to turn around and say, "I see you." You can't shame that younger self into growing. You can't ignore it, outwork it, or outrun it. The more you suppress it, the more power it gains, because it speaks through your relationships, your patterns, your hesitation, your dreams, and your fears. Your emotional wounds don't disappear. They evolve. They become the people you chase, the opportunities you avoid, the arguments you repeat, the failures you recreate. The world keeps handing you the same lessons until you meet the part of you that stopped learning. Every emotional block you have today is tied to a moment your younger self didn't understand. A moment when you felt unprotected, unseen, misunderstood, or rejected. The body moved on, but the psyche paused. And now, no matter how old you become, that younger self still sits inside you with the same unanswered questions. Am I enough? Do they see me? Am I safe if I speak? What if I'm not loved? What if I fail? What if they leave? What if I'm not good enough? These questions rule a surprising amount of your adult behavior. Not because you're immature, but because you never learned how to soothe the child within you who first asked them. But here is the part people rarely realize. The younger version of you is not your enemy. It is the guardian of your deepest truth. That frozen version still holds all the emotions you weren't allowed to express, all the creativity you suppressed, all the anger you buried, all the curiosity you abandoned, all the sensitivity you were taught to hide. Inside your most childlike traits lies the blueprint of your next chapter. And emotional maturity doesn't come from silencing that blueprint. It comes from finally listening. So instead of asking yourself, "What's wrong with me?" ask, "What happened to me?" That question alone shifts your entire inner world. Your reactions stop feeling like failures and start making sense. Your fear stops looking dramatic and starts looking logical. Your patterns stop feeling random and start revealing a story. You begin to see that your emotional stuckness is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of unprocessed experience. Imagine for a moment walking back to that frozen version of yourself. Not as a critic, not as a judge, but as an adult who finally has the strength and insight to understand. Imagine placing a hand on the shoulder of the child, or teen, or young adult version of you and saying, "You don't have to carry this alone anymore." This is where emotional growth restarts. Not through force, not through discipline, but through compassion toward the part of you that endured things your adult mind has forgotten how to feel. Your emotional world begins to evolve the moment you allow yourself to feel without running. And the moment you stop fighting your younger self, something extraordinary happens. The fear loosens its grip. The procrastination eases. The insecurity softens. The world doesn't feel as threatening. You start becoming less reactive and more aware. You stop repeating the same relationships. You begin to move from survival toward creation, from hiding toward expression, from confusion toward clarity. Real maturity is integration, not perfection. It's bringing the lost pieces of yourself back home. And maybe that's why you're here listening to this. Something in you is tired of repeating the same emotional loops. Something in you is ready to stop living on the surface. Something in you is finally ready to grow. Not by pretending the past didn't shape you, but by understanding how deeply it did. Growth is not becoming someone new. Growth is becoming someone whole. If this message touched something inside you, even a small part, let it be your reminder that you're not alone in this journey. And if you feel that small spark, that shift, that moment of recognition, then tap the like button, not just for this video, but as a quiet promise to yourself that you're ready to begin the work. There comes a moment in every inner journey when you realize something startling. The parts of you that feel the most chaotic are not trying to ruin your life. They're trying to protect you. The panic you feel when someone gets too close. The irritation that rises when someone outshines you. The sudden withdrawal when things feel too good. These reactions aren't random, they're messages. And the messenger is your shadow, the part of you that carries every emotion you refuse to process. Most people treat their shadow as an enemy. They see it as the source of their anger, jealousy, insecurity, or self-sabotage. But they never stop to ask why those reactions exist in the first place. They forget that emotional protection doesn't always look healthy. Sometimes it looks like pushing away the people who want to love you. Sometimes it looks like destroying opportunities right when they're about to blossom. Sometimes it looks like staying small because your shadow remembers the pain of being too visible. Your shadow is not darkness. It's the part of you holding the memories you never learned how to carry. And the more you suppress it, the louder it becomes. That's why you react so strongly to certain people. Not because of who they are, but because they reflect a part of you that you still can't accept. When someone is confident, your shadow remembers every moment you were told to shrink. When someone is successful, your shadow remembers the times you failed and felt alone in it. When someone is deeply expressive, your shadow remembers every moment you were punished for speaking up. And because these memories were never integrated, you misinterpret the trigger as a threat. But the trigger is a mirror. Your shadow uses other people to show you the parts of yourself you've abandoned. We all project. We take our unhealed emotions and pin them onto the world so we don't have to face them internally. And the projections we dislike the most are often the ones that reveal our deepest wounds. It's easy to say, I don't like that person. It's much harder to say, something about them reminds me of a truth I haven't owned yet. That level of honesty scares people. But it's also the doorway to emotional evolution. Because when you stop blaming the world for the parts of yourself you haven't integrated, you reclaim your power. Your reactions stop controlling you. Your shadow stops dominating you. You begin to see the truth behind every trigger. This is about me. But this awareness is only the first step. The real transformation begins when you stop analyzing your shadow from a distance and begin speaking to it like an old friend. Imagine sitting across from the part of you that holds all the disappointments you never talked about. The part that remembers every secret you kept, stay safe. The part that still believes you're unworthy. Not because it wants you to suffer, but because it's still living inside the memory where you felt unloved. If you could look that part of you in the eyes, what would you say? What would you ask? How long has it been waiting for you to listen? Your shadow softens the moment you stop fighting it. Most people don't realize how much of their emotional exhaustion comes from resisting themselves. They think avoiding their shadow keeps them stable. But avoidance doesn't keep you stable. It keeps you stuck. That stuckness shows up in relationships most of all. The shadow shows itself clearly when someone tries to get close to you. Intimacy is the stage where your wounds perform the loudest. You might fear abandonment because you were abandoned before. You might fear judgment because you spent years trying to be perfect. You might fear vulnerability because being open once led to pain. And so, without even realizing it, you push away what you want. Not because you don't want connection, but because your shadow still expects connection to be dangerous. And here's the twist. The people you choose in your life often reflect the parts of your shadow you're ready to face. That's why certain relationships feel like déjà vu. You keep meeting the same type of person in a different body. Not because you're cursed, but because your psyche is trying to finish a lesson it never completed. The shadow repeats patterns until the conscious mind finally says, I understand. The moment you understand, the pattern begins to dissolve. That's the power of awareness, but awareness alone is not enough. Integration is the true evolution. Integration means giving the shadow a seat at your table, not as a master, but as a part of your inner council. It means acknowledging that every feeling, no matter how ugly, carries wisdom. Your anger tells you where your boundaries were crossed. Your jealousy reveals desires you've ignored. Your fear shows you where you've been hurt. Your procrastination shows the places where pressure suffocates joy. Every difficult emotion is a teacher, waiting for your permission to speak. When you stop hiding from these emotions, you stop hiding from your true self. And that's when something remarkable happens. Your creativity returns. Your intuition sharpens. Your courage increases. Your heart opens. The energy you once used to suppress yourself becomes the energy you now use to express yourself. The shadow is not against you. It wants to help you grow. But it refuses to do so through denial. It demands honesty. It demands depth. It demands that you stop pretending you're fine and start exploring why you're not. And the moment you begin this exploration, You start evolving beyond the version of yourself you've been stuck in for years. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop repeating patterns and start making choices. You stop being controlled by your past and start creating a new future. Emotional growth is not becoming someone new. It's becoming someone whole. And as you continue this journey, remember that inner transformation doesn't happen in isolation. It grows stronger when you surround yourself with conversations that awaken you, challenge you, and remind you of your potential. If you feel something shifting inside you right now, even subtly, don't ignore it. That feeling is your shadow opening its door. And if you want to stay on this journey with me as we go deeper into the parts of yourself that you've never explored but desperately need to reclaim, then subscribe. Not out of habit, but because you don't want to lose the version of you that's waking up right now. There comes a point in this inner journey when you begin to notice something subtle but life-altering. The more you understand your hidden self, the less power your old wounds have over you. A new kind of clarity begins to form. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady. Like a light that has always been there but was buried under years of dust. You begin to see patterns you once thought were fate. You begin to recognize choices you once believed were instincts. You start to understand that the life you've lived so far was shaped not by who you truly are, but by who you needed to be to survive. Survival shapes the first version of you, but awakening shapes the second. And awakening only happens when you stop asking the world for permission to grow. The truth is, the world benefits from your stagnation. Systems are easier to control when you're insecure. Relationships are easier to maintain when you don't ask for more. Workplaces benefit when you fear change. But your inner life, your soul, your potential, they rot in that environment. To grow, you must be willing to disappoint the versions of yourself that people expected you to remain. Growth is a quiet rebellion. The moment you begin to evolve emotionally, the world around you reacts. Some people become uncomfortable because you're no longer predictable. Others try to pull you back into old roles because your growth threatens their comfort. And some, very few, will celebrate your evolution because they've been waiting for you to finally meet yourself. These are the people who belong in your next chapter. But the more important question is, which version of yourself belongs in your next chapter? As you've explored your inner child and your shadow, you've uncovered truths you've ignored for years. Now, the work shifts, because once you see who you are beneath the mask, the next challenge is deciding who you are becoming. And becoming is an active process. It requires intention. It requires awareness. It requires courage. Most people think healing is about erasing the past. It isn't. Healing is about reclaiming the parts of you that the past tried to steal. Your sensitivity, your passion, your voice, your boundaries, your ability to love without losing yourself, your ability to fail without collapsing, your ability to feel without drowning. These parts didn't die. They just curled inward, waiting for space to breathe again. You create that space by living honestly. Emotional honesty is not about exposing your wounds to everyone. It's about refusing to lie to yourself. It's about noticing when you shrink your needs to keep the peace. It's about admitting when you stay in situations out of fear, not love. It's about recognizing when your anger is really grief or when your detachment is really exhaustion, or when your silence is really a plea to be understood. And the moment you tell yourself the truth, you can no longer live the same way. The truth demands new choices. Those choices are where you meet your future self. The future version of you is not built from perfection, it's built from integration. The pieces of you that once battled each other begin to cooperate. The inner child brings curiosity. The shadow brings depth. The adult self brings direction. And together they create a unified identity, one capable of walking toward meaning rather than away from fear. But before that happens, something else occurs, something most people never prepare for: grief. You grieve the person you have been, the person who coped the best they could with what they had, the person who tolerated too much, stayed too quiet, dimmed their light, and carried burdens in silence. You honor that version of yourself, but you don't let them steer anymore. Healing is not just becoming more, it's also letting go. You might feel lost during this stage. You might question everything: your relationships, your ambitions, your beliefs, your identity. But this confusion is not regression. It is a sign that the old pathways in your mind are dissolving, making room for new ones. Your psyche reorganizes itself when you evolve. It's normal to feel like you're walking through fog before you step into a clearing. And once that clearing arrives, something beautiful becomes possible. A life aligned with your truth, not with your conditioning. Alignment is when your actions reflect your values rather than your fears. It's when you stop performing and start living. It's when you set boundaries without guilt. It's when you speak without trembling. It's when you choose relationships that nourish the version of you you're becoming, not the version of you you're trying to escape. It's when you stop chasing validation and begin seeking connection. Alignment doesn't make life easier, it makes it meaningful. You still feel pain, but it doesn't control you. You still feel fear, but it doesn't paralyze you. You still feel sadness, but it doesn't define you. You still feel desire, but it doesn't confuse you. You still feel anger, but it becomes a compass instead of a cage. When you reach this point, this union of your inner child, your shadow, and your conscious self, the world begins to look different. Not because the world changed, but because you are finally seeing it through the eyes of someone who is no longer hiding from themselves. And now, your purpose begins to reveal itself. Purpose is not a single mission or grand calling. It is the natural expression of a person who is emotionally whole. Purpose emerges when you stop living from fear and start living from authenticity. It flows through the smallest choices: how you speak, how you love, how you create, how you move through the world. Your purpose is not something you find, it's something you remember. Remembering who you are after years of survival is one of the most courageous acts a human can perform. And as we reach the end of this journey together, there's something important you need to understand. Your inner work doesn't end here. This process continues throughout your life. You will revisit these lessons again and again. Not because you failed, but because each stage of your life requires a deeper version of you. Growth spirals upward. And now I want to ask you something that matters more than you realize. Out of everything you felt, heard, or recognized in this journey, what stood out to you the most? What truth did you hear that finally made something click inside you? What part of you felt seen for the first time? Take a moment and share it below. Your words might be the reminder someone else desperately needs, and your reflection might be the first step of someone else's healing. So if something shifted inside you, even slightly, leave a comment. Your voice belongs here.